All right, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. This is the FreeMind webinar on non-dilutive funding for cancer research and development. A few general notes to begin with. First of all, any questions you may have, please feel free to type them in the questions area, and I'll try to answer as many as possible towards the end. Additionally, this is being recorded and will be on YouTube, so feel free to, and you'll be receiving a link to that as well as the slide deck. So again, feel free to use those, send them to whoever you think may enjoy them or find them interesting. And that's it for now. So without further ado, let's begin. So this, as I mentioned, is part of the FreeMind Summer School for 2014. And we basically have a webinar every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time. And as I mentioned, today is for cancer and non-dilutive funding. And next week will be in the neurology area, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system, and all generally neurology-related non-dilutive funding opportunities. So if that's either relevant for you or for somebody you know, by all means register or send them a link to register and attend. I'm sure you'll enjoy it if it's relevant for you. So just a few words about who's speaking with you today as a representative of FreeMind. And FreeMind, basically, as you probably are aware, but just in case you're not, we're a consultancy, a consulting firm. We've been doing this for about 15 years now. We have 40 full-time employees, and we work across the life sciences in all areas of research and really with diverse clients as well, anywhere from academia, research centers, etc., and throughout the industry, starting from small startups and all the way up to big pharma. We submit about 250 applications a year, and so over time and with the volume of our work, we really have amassed a substantial amount of expertise and experience. And with specifically with impressive track record, I would say, with large-scale applications, just worth mentioning. We view ourselves as a tool that should be used to maximize your funding potential, and we go about that, first of all, by identifying the most relevant funding opportunities. It sounds trivial, but it really isn't. On many occasions, you could be there are various opportunities out there. Some of them could be fairly relevant, not perfect. It's really, there are so many different options and different mechanisms, and solicited and unsolicited, and it's really a landscape you have to know how to navigate in order to really maximize your chances. And specifically, when even if you have great science, if you're not submitting it correctly or to the right place, then the chances are you will not be awarded. So that's definitely something to consider. Obviously, strategizing to maximize the chances of an award, that either being by actually producing the grant to the specifications of the specific mechanism, or generally by knowing how to present things, managing complex project production processes. So again, it could be multi-PI, multifaceted, large-scale applications. We do all that. We lead the joint application writing. It is a joint process, but we kind of take control of the process and spearhead it, and supporting any final contract negotiations when that's relevant. But enough about that. Let's talk about non-dilutive sources of funding, and specifically for the cancer space. So first of all, taking a look at the NIH budget, and the NIH, as you'll see when we go through the specific solicitations, is a major funder of research in this area and in general. The NIH budget is currently at about $29 billion a year, and surprisingly or not surprisingly, actually, a very large portion of that is devoted to extramural research through research project grants, R&D contracts, etc. Basically, something in the vicinity of $24 billion, actually it's closer to $24.5 billion out of the 29 are going outwards towards external research. So it's very, very substantial, the amount of money that they're allocating outwards. And more to the point of what we're talking about today, the NCI budget within the NIH is actually fairly constant, around the $5 billion annually, the $5 billion mark. It did undergo a slight decrease with, basically everything underwent a slight decrease, but we're seeing a recovery, and actually it's still not quite at where it was before sequestration, but it's getting there. It's really 4.9 something, and beforehand it was about 5.1. So it's all things considered, it's fairly stable. It's a very constant number, and the reason that the NCI is being funded so substantially and so constantly with such a figure, and I mean, if you think about it, $5 billion out of an entire budget of 29 is a huge amount of money, and this is specifically only for cancer out of everything the NIH funds, and the reason basically is well, at least a part of the reason, because I'm worth mentioning, I'm not in any way associated with the NCI, so I don't know really how much I can speak for them. But basically, it makes sense because, for example, this research, well, actually, it was conducted in 2010, but there are some interesting findings here. And basically, what they did here was take a look at the national healthcare burden associated with cancer, and the findings are pretty staggering. The estimated cost of the healthcare burden associated with cancer, and keep in mind this was 2010, so it's likely risen since then, was $124 billion a year, and that's a staggering number, and I guess that's really why that completely dwarfs the $5 billion annually that's going towards research. And I guess the point here would be that any way to use those $5 billion to lower the $124 billion costs of treating cancer and the healthcare burden is money well spent. And actually, an interesting paper by the Milken Institute about 2 years ago, or actually a year and a half, found that, and this is, I'll be happy to share this over email if anybody's interested in more of the details, but they found that actually the government's return on investment for investing in research in the life sciences is about $2.3 for every dollar they invest. And obviously when you receive a grant, the government is not receiving any royalties or any percentage of the IP, excuse me. So how are they receiving that return on investment? And I think this is a large part of the answer, reducing the healthcare burden and the costs. And you can notice here that it's also divided by the different indications. So breast cancer being the most costly, colorectal, lung, lymphoma, prostate, etc. So some of the major cancers, and these are basically the costs of them. Interestingly, if you look at the where the NCI funding is actually going in terms of the types of cancer, and this is data from 2012, simply because the NCI has yet to release its 2013 specifics of its budget. But we don't really expect any marked changes in that. So you can treat this as just as relevant. And you can see a lot of correlation between where they're spending the money or investing it rather, and where the costs are high, and that's because that's a big part of what they're supposed to do, is reduce that healthcare burden. And another thing worth noting here is that the first out of all the different bars you see here is clinical trials. And now historically, it's true, it's been difficult, and it is difficult to receive funding for clinical trials from the NIH in the cancer space. That being said, it is definitely possible, and although don't get the wrong idea here, this is all clinical trials, so it would be breast cancer clinical trials and lung cancer and prostate and colorectal and everything. So it's not that they're funding more clinical trials than anything else, because these are not mutually exclusive, and that's a summary of all of the other indications in the clinical trials context. But the point here basically would be that there's definitely money out there for clinical trials, and I'll touch on specific solicitations that allow that. It's definitely worth noting and being aware of. And specifically, I touched on most of the funding in the NIH going to extramural research, and the NCI is no different. You can see here that out of a budget, and this again is from 2012, but out of a $5 billion budget, more or less, only 850 more or less thousand was going to intramural research. So basically, a vast majority of the funding is being allocated outwards towards extramural, for external research. And this is important. This is something definitely worth noting. So let's talk a little bit about specific funding opportunities in the cancer space. And I'd like to start, and this is maybe the most important distinction and the most important thing. If you go home learning nothing else, then please remember this. Well, unless you're home already. But basically, there are two ways to go about receiving funding from the NIH. Solicited and unsolicited, or investigator-initiated. In cancer, it's a very interesting situation because, as you're very well aware, there are literally thousands of different kinds of cancer. There are even a vast amount of different families of types of cancer, like the ones you saw on the previous graphs, and inside each one of those, as you know, are various other types. So there are so many different areas of research that it's impossible to really have specific solicitations for each and every different type of research. And the way they go about taking care of this issue is basically heavy utilization of what's called the Omnibus solicitations, the parent announcements for basically investigator-initiated research, meaning you don't look for a specific solicitation that is aligned with exactly what you want to do, either the type of cancer or the type of research or the stage in the research or the general area of research, being either diagnostics or drug delivery or whatever. Basically, through these mechanisms, the investigator initiated, and I'll be touching on the specific ones, the R01, the SBIR, and the STTR in a second, but what you'll basically be doing is pitching your ideas to the NIH, and this goes initially actually to the NIH itself, not even the NCI. These are NIH-wide programs, and you can ask for funding for cancer, but you can also ask through these programs for funding for other things. And then there is an R01, which is generally funded up to $2.5 million over 5 years. And then there are also SBIRs and STTRs that you're probably familiar with that can be investigator-initiated and utilized for funding cancer research. And I'd like to give you an example kind of to put this in perspective. In 2013, 82% of the R01s that were being paid by the NIH, by the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, 82% of the R01s were this R01 investigator-initiated general mechanism. Only 18% of the R01s that the NCI was awarding in 2013 were actually NCI-specific R01s, like many of the ones we're going to speak about. But basically, the bottom line here, and what I'm getting at, and what I think is very important to understand, is 4 times more R01s were awarded through this mechanism than through all the other R01 mechanisms the NCI offers put together. Actually, even a bit more than 4 times more. So basically, the take-home message is there is funding out there for you, even if no matter what you search for and what you find and what solicitations are out there, if you have good, interesting, promising, innovative research, there is definitely money out there for you. But now that being said, we should definitely also discuss specific solicitations. And to start that, I'd like to start by speaking about some solicitations that are in the exploratory research area, kind of initial research. And the first one is actually kind of touching on the previous R01, Omnibus R21 that I discussed. And this is an interesting issue. Usually you may have noticed that when you're talking about the different investigator-initiated mechanisms, usually you would mention R21s as well, and they were not there. And the reason that is true is because the NCI, because of all the reasons I mentioned earlier, the various different types of research and the variety that doesn't really allow specific solicitations for so many different indications in the NCI and within their mission. So they have their own Omnibus R21, an investigator-initiated program that is actually part of the NCI, and that's only for R21s, and this is the mechanism we're speaking about now. So funding for this is $275,000 over 2 years. And again, it's an R21, so it's aimed at funding exploratory, developmental research, high-risk, high-reward kind of deals. They're not afraid to take risks with this mechanism. So if you have a really interesting idea, initial stages, no preliminary data necessary, although if you do have any preliminary data, anything that would substantiate your claims, by all means, we always advise our clients to add that, but it's not necessary. And so anything like that that you really believe can lead to a breakthrough and would be of interest to the NCI, and this is a great mechanism to utilize. And again, to put this in perspective, there are currently, as we speak, 236 active NCI Omnibus R21s that are being paid right now. And that is a staggering number. So again, a lot of funding is being allocated through the NCI via the investigator-initiated mechanisms. And this is something that's, again, really worth remembering. This is important. That being said, every rule has exceptions, and this is one of the rare cases where there is a specific solicitation asking for proposals regarding a specific type of cancer. You won't see many examples like this at all. Specifically, when you do see them, they'll usually be in pancreatic cancer. And that's for many reasons, but basically this is one of the areas, as probably most of you are well aware, that we're kind of behind. We're not, in many cases, pancreatic cancer is a death sentence still. So this is an area that the NIH specifically tries to focus on. And for that reason, there are sometimes specific solicitations like this one. This one is an R21. It's meant to promote innovative research towards better understanding of the biology, etiology, detection, prevention, and treatment of pancreatic cancer. And the funding, as I mentioned, is $275,000 up to 2 years, over up to 2 years, not a year. Excuse me. Deadline here, the upcoming deadline is October 16th. And again, R21, high risk, high reward, no preliminary data necessary. So if this is where you are in your research, by all means, go for it. Great program. So, in the area of technology and assay development, a great program is IMAT. It's basically early stage innovative molecular analysis technology development for cancer research. And there are R21 is really a very, very interesting program. Historically, this has funded a lot of very innovative things. They're looking for really groundbreaking, very novel technologies, great ideas, things that have the potential to significantly affect and transform investigations. And this is from their wording. For example, the Affymetrix gene chip, among many other things, was funded by this mechanism. So really, they're looking for groundbreaking things here, and the area generally of focus would be cancer biology, prevention, diagnosis, treatment, control, epidemiology, and/or cancer health disparities. Again, it has to be molecular analysis technology, and should be based on molecular and cellular characterizations of cancer. Funding here is very high for an R21. It's $500,000. which is not an amount that's easy to raise for early stage, just kind of concepts and no preliminary data necessary. It's a lot of money for that stage of research. So if you think your ideas are on this level of innovation and its significance, then by all means, a great program. And once, if you have IMAT invested, you'll also see it really high increase in the ease with which you can raise additional funds, because it's basically a great thing to have and say to investors. This is an SBIR issued by the NCI that's actually kind of complementing the IMAT program I just discussed, because also in this case they're looking to fund highly innovative molecular and cellular analysis technologies, relevant for cancer, obviously, and basically the difference is, first of all, it's an SBIR, and besides that, they're looking to really bring this towards commercial development. So it's more advanced. The phase 1 here is $225,000 for phase 1, and $1.5 million for phase 2. So again, a great mechanism for if this is your area of research. And worth mentioning, the upcoming deadline is November 4th, and this is a non-standard mechanism in terms of deadlines. There are only 2 a year, so if you miss November, you'll have to wait till May of next year, late May. So take that into consideration. In the area of nanotechnology, and I kind of divided the funding opportunities according to the different areas of research, because like I mentioned, specific indications and types of cancer are not funded specifically. So I'm just going to go through the different general areas of research, and in each category I'll be speaking about different solicitations. So in nanotechnology, there's an interesting opportunity called the IRCN, or the Innovative Research in Cancer Nanotechnology. And this is a UO1. A UO1 basically is a collaborative agreement, which means essentially it's much more hands-on with the agency. They would be interested in really seeing your progress. They'd have conversations with you, see how you're doing in regards to your milestones, the advancement of the project. A bit more hands-on, but a great mechanism. And a lot of our clients say that they actually benefit a lot from that relationship. The funding here is $450,000 a year for up to 5 years, so we're talking about $2.25 million. And basically the point would be multidisciplinary research and transformative discoveries in cancer biology and or oncology through obviously the use of nanotechnology. And if this is your area of research, then by all means read into the specific areas of interest, and if you're aligned with that, and definitely pursue this. Worth mentioning though, this mechanism will not support clinical trials or in vivo studies in human subjects. So take that into consideration, definitely. Deadlines here also non-standard. The upcoming one will be October 29th. And again, only 2 a year with this mechanism, so try not to miss that. And next one will be April of next year, and then, well, who knows, but probably again October of the same year, although it has not been issued for that stage yet. Okay, molecular diagnostics, imaging, and biomarkers. A lot of funding in this field, a great area of research to be in. Let's start by looking at the imaging and biomarkers for early cancer detection, R01. Again, funded by the NCI. Standard funding for an R01 here, up to $2.5 million over 5 years. And again, non-standard due dates. So the upcoming one would be December 11th, and then if you miss that, you'll have to wait pretty much about a year from now, a little bit less than that, till in July of next year. And the point here would be to fund applications that combine imaging and biomarkers basically trying to achieve improving cancer screening, early cancer detection and diagnosis. And again, if this is what you are doing or interested in doing or interested in funding, then utilize this mechanism by all means. Another interesting opportunity in this area of research is the academic-industrial partnership for translation of in vivo imaging systems for cancer investigations. This again is an R01, similar funding, well actually identical funding, 2.5 million over 5 years. A few things to note about this. First of all, there needs to be an academic-industrial partnership, so you do need to collaborate with an academic. A very, very interesting point about this solicitation is it supports clinical trials. Many of the specific solicitations do not support clinical trials. This one does. Also, by the way, the Omnibus R01, excuse me, the first one I discussed before everything, maybe I should have mentioned there also, it can be used to fund clinical trials. So another major point about that. But again, not very many opportunities, so it's worth mentioning here. That being said, it will not support commercial production. It's meant to take you through the clinical trials, not supporting commercial production. And basically, as I mentioned, you need to have a research partnership with an academic, or if you're an academic, with somebody in the industry. And the point would be to accelerate translation of in vivo imaging, image-guided and/or spectroscopic systems and methods that would be designed to solve targeted cancer problems. Upcoming deadline, October 5th. Okay, validation of molecular diagnostics to predict patient outcomes using specimens from multi-site cancer trials. This is an R21, so more initial and early stage research. 275,000 in direct costs of over 2 years. Upcoming deadline is October 16th, and basically what they're trying to do here is advance the transition of candidate biomarkers from initial correlative observations into real diagnostics. And so we're talking about early stage research here in that area, and it also would like you to basically be using tumor specimens linked to specific treatment and clinical outcome information. If that's what you're doing, and by all means do utilize this program. That being said, if you are a bit more advanced but still in this area, there is a paired solicitation, an R01 with a very, well, actually identical scope. The difference here would be, first of all, in funding, both in the amount you receive every year, which would be $500,000 for up to 5 years, so it's also longer-term research. And basically here, the point would be to engage investigators into fully developed validation research projects. So again, more advanced. And if you are looking to do this using specimens from multi-site cancer trials, then this is a great mechanism to use to fund that. For the R01, the upcoming deadline is October 5th, so get moving if this is what you're interested in. Great opportunity here, image-guided drug delivery in cancer. So this is, again, an R01. So again, $2.5 million over 5 years, and non-standard due dates. November 19th is the due date for this one, and again, only 2 a year, not the standard 3. And basically, they're looking to fund image-guided drug delivery systems, including real-time image guidance, monitoring, quantitative in vivo characterizations, and validation of delivery and response. If this is what you're doing, this is great because this is a mechanism designed to fund specifically that. It's issued by the NCI in joint with the NIBIB. So great opportunity if this is your area of research. Biomarkers for early detection of hematopoietic malignancies. Again, R01, again, $2.5 million a year. October 5th deadline. There is an equivalent R21, so if this is a bit too advanced for you, but this is your area of research and you have less preliminary data, then by all means submit the R21 and not the R01. If you do that, the deadline would be October 16th and not the 5th. And basically, if this sounds like it's right for you, then take a look at the specific areas of interest as well and see if this really is aligned with your research plans. Okay, this is a very exciting, very interesting opportunity. Utilizing the PLCO biospecimens resource to bridge gaps in cancer etiology and early detection research. Great opportunity. First of all, the funding, which is hard to believe, but the funding is actually not even the main thing here. It is $2.5 million, so that's a big deal. That being said, the real advantage of being awarded this, and this is again UO1, so it's a collaborative agreement, much more hands-on in this case, and the reason is what I'm about to explain. Basically, the point here is utilizing advantages of the unique biorepository that they have of the NCI-sponsored prostate, lung, colorectal, and ovarian cancer screening trial. They have a vast amount of almost 3 million samples of different patients in different stages of the disease with different treatments, and they have an entire data set of all the relevant information. So this is a resource that is invaluable. And since it's invaluable, the reason that they do this is they want to decide who gets to use this invaluable research tool. And so basically this is a mechanism they use not only to allocate money, but also to decide what ideas are worthy of access to this great resource. Obviously, projects must involve use of the PLCO biospecimens. They will not consider anything else because this is the point of this mechanism. Deadline is February 20th of next year. Again, only 2 years, so February and June. So if you have any plans that would be aligned with the use of such a great resource, then definitely I would think about doing this. This can bring you forward and advance your research in ways that without this resource would really be difficult to achieve. Okay, the NSF, not the NIH anymore, not the NCI as well. They issue SBIRs and STTRs that can be utilized to fund cancer research as well. So basically the scope of funding for NSF and SBIRs are $150,000 over 6 months for phase 1 and $750,000 over 2 years for phase 2. There are specific areas of research that the NSF is interested in. Nanotechnology, advanced materials and manufacturing, and biomedical technologies that would include diagnostic assays and platforms. Drug delivery is of great interest to them, and medical imaging technology. So again, you can see the relevance to cancer here. That being said, these are not specifically designed to fund cancer research, but it definitely can be utilized for that. Upcoming deadline is December 11th, and another advantage of looking to the NSF for funding is that traditionally it's easier to get funding from them. The success rates are significantly higher there. So if this level of funding is something that you are interested in, I definitely recommend considering this. We love sending them applications as well. They also have STTRs. So basically it would be very similar, although the point here would be technology transfer. So an academic would need to have a significant intellectual role. That the point would be transferring technology and ideas from academia towards the industry, and that's why you would receive funding. Another noteworthy difference is the phase 1 here is paid over 1 year and not over 6 months. Again, deadline December 11th. An additional fantastic source of funding for cancer research is the CDMRPs. And these are issued by the Congress, the CDMRPs being the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. And these are under the Department of Defense. So basically, very, very large awards, up to $5 million. Specifically, last year, $5 million were awarded to a few breast cancer programs. So really, large sums of money here. And they have very, very high budgets. And these are just budgets for awards. We're not talking about a budget for an institution. This is really net award money. So $120 million specifically for breast cancer research, $10.5 million lung cancer, $20 million for ovarian, 80 million for prostate cancer. So again, a lot of money here specifically for cancer research. CDMRPs can be hefty documents to prepare. So take that into consideration. It's not easy. Basically, the process would be initially you would submit a white paper. Typically, that's a high-level overview of the project you're proposing. Usually 2 pages is what they require, but that can vary. Sometimes they require 5 pages, 8 pages, and on occasion even 10 pages. But generally, it's usually 2 pages. And the white paper is actually the main cutoff stage, meaning most of the applications that are denied will be denied at this stage. To say that if you are asked to submit a full application, your chances have gone up significantly. Important to notice that making a 2-pager really convey all the strengths you would like it to and present your project well sometimes can be very difficult. Although 2 pages sounds like it's not a lot of work, it can be actually very challenging. Hopefully you'll be asked to submit a full application after 90 days after submission. These are open for a period, and typically 90 days after you submit your white paper, you'll be asked to hopefully submit a full application. At that point, you really have to hit the ground running because you'll have, depending on the mechanism, between 45 and 90 days to submit the full application. And as I mentioned, a full application is a hefty document, and then that's reviewed and hopefully awarded. Currently, the CDMRPs have passed, and typically they start being announced in February, sometimes March, and even April. But definitely stay tuned for that because this is a fantastic source of funding as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about the review process. Now, this is taken specifically from the NIH, but it's fairly applicable regardless, NSF and DoD and other places as well. So what they're basically doing when they're reviewing an application is weighing the risks against the strength of your application. And there are basically 2 things you have to look at. Excuse me. First of all, are you responsive to the solicitation? And if you have to be responsive. If you're not aligned with what they're looking to fund, they obviously will not fund you. But also how competitive your application is. And when we talk about how competitive it is, we're basically talking about 5 main criteria that you're being scored on. And these are the specific criteria that they use to score applications in the NIH, at least. Leadership, do you have the right leadership in place? The PI, the key personnel, do they have the expertise? Do they have the experience required to lead such a project? The environment, do you have the required lab space? Do you have any tools that are needed, being equipment, etc., depending on what you're doing and what you're looking to do. The significance of your research, is it truly of real significance to public health? Is it innovative? Are you really going to change things? If the research succeeds, what does that really have real implications? And the answer to all these questions definitely has to be yes. That being said, considering, and hopefully all the answers will be yes, what will really differentiate between an application being a good application but not being awarded and an application that is awarded is the scientific approach, the milestones, the specific aims, really a top-notch, high-quality scientific approach is what wins awards. All right, so a few tools that you can use to basically maximize your chances of winning an award. First of all, really understand the interests of the agency. There are trends and there are specific interests, and understanding these and communicating with program officers and understanding the specific interest at this specific point in time and the mission of the agency. This is a critical part of actually being awarded. You can even change the same research project can be, as you probably are aware, the same scientific story can be told in many different ways on occasion, and that's also part of the same picture I'm trying to paint here, where really you have to customize what you're doing to the interests of the agency. Focusing your project application, you have to really submit an entire full package project, defined end and start points. It really has to be comprehensive and conclusive, and you should really make sure it covers all areas. An important distinction to make here is that none of these mechanisms, and actually none of many other mechanisms in generally in non-dilutive funding, they do not fund a company or a university or a research institute or a big pharma entity. It doesn't matter. They only fund projects. They're not funding your company. They're funding your proposed project. And the way they look at it is they really only look at the project. So that being said, you have to submit a well-defined project. Any gaps in your capabilities should be addressed. Either collaborate or find a solution. Hire somebody who is an expert on the subject. You really have to submit an entire package. You have to ask for what's necessary. Don't ask for too much. They don't like that. But also do not ask for too little. They need to feel that you have a real grasp of what you're aspiring to do. And I already touched on presenting a complete project and leveraging basically research collaborations, as I mentioned. You shouldn't collaborate for the sake of collaboration, but when you do have a gap in your capability, definitely by all means collaborate. You need to address any issues there may be. Also, you need to target the right mechanism. There are, as I mentioned here, are various pockets of money, and this is something you need to be really aware of. I'm sure many of you were not aware, for example, of the prevalence of the investigator-initiated mechanisms in the cancer space. You really have to be well acquainted with the landscape in order to really direct your applications in the right direction. Again, different sizes of awards and success rates and things that you should definitely take into consideration. These are things you should find out. Something we definitely believe in wholeheartedly is conducting a strategic assessment. You have to really understand the landscape and look at non-dilutive funding as a strategy and a strategic source of income, and not a kind of a one-time gamble. I mean, you can look at it as kind of a one-time thing, and maybe you'll win in that, and that's absolutely fantastic for you. But to make it a real strategic source of income, you have to take a more diligent approach and strategize and break it out over time and see how you're going to approach this. And that's basically what I'm getting to, is the multi-submission granting strategy, which is something we definitely believe in. The FreeMind team, going back to who we are and how we do the things that we just discussed. So actually this is a bit outdated, no longer 35, it's actually 40 full-time employees now. Should get that fixed. A smaller team of analysts and also our managers and program managers, not program managers, project managers and grant writers and consultants. Specifically, and we have great professional leaders, but I'd specifically like to thank Dr. Sigal Katz, and one of our senior analysts, for putting together the information for this presentation today. So, on our specific process, and basically we provide two core services, and I kind of touched on this, so I'll just summarize quickly. A first core service we provide is the strategic consulting, the strategic assessment. So we do exactly what I proposed. Our analysts are very well acquainted with the funding landscape, and over a series of interactions with your team, they would get to know your specific science, and basically they would help you build that multi-submission granting strategy we just discussed, and then enacting upon that strategy would be the second part of the project, where basically our grant consultants and writers would be sourcing the information initially from you, any information you have, drafting that into an initial draft by inserting that into a comprehensive template that would be adhering to the guidelines of the specific solicitation you would be pursuing at that time. That creates the first draft, and then from there on it's kind of a iterative review, ping-pong back and forth process, wherein you basically would send it back to them. They would insert comments, rewrite sections, etc., send it back to you, and kind of back and forth until everybody feels that we've really maximized the chances of award. And then we return to the strategic side and advance to the next application. So this is kind of a schematic view of that. It starts with your R&D funding needs. We create, in light of that, a multi-submission granting strategy. On the short term, we act upon that granting strategy with a short-term granting strategy, and then specifically write the grants. And hopefully they're favorably reviewed, you receive funding, and then we start again. At this point, I'd like to thank you very much for attending. My name is Jonathan Adalist, by the way. I failed to mention that. And I think at this time, I would like to address a few questions that have been asked. So if you have any questions, please type them in now. It's still definitely a possibility, and I'll try to go through some of the questions that were asked. All right here. Well, a few thanks, but you're quite welcome. Can R&Ds, can R01s be used to fund IND, to basically achieving IND status for a drug or molecule? The answer is yes. You need to know how to go about doing that and choose the correct R01. But absolutely, yes. The answer is a resounding yes. And let me see here. Okay, there are two questions here that kind of relate to each other, so I'll try to answer them both. One is, are non-U.S. entities eligible for these funds? And the second one is, does it help to have a U.S. collaborator? So I'll try to touch on both of those questions. Basically, first of all, you do not need to be a U.S. entity. In the vast majority of the opportunities, they would be open to non-American entities. You should check, and it is stated in every single mechanism, in every single solicitation will state whether or not it's open to non-U.S. entities. And collaboration-wise, does it help to have a U.S. collaborator? Yes and no. It definitely helps if there's a specific gap in your capabilities that can be addressed by collaborating with somebody in the U.S. And to that effect, though, it doesn't have to be somebody in the U.S. If the gap in your capabilities is best addressed by collaborating with a world expert who is in the Max Planck Institute, then by all means collaborate with somebody from Germany. Again, what they're looking to fund is a project, a whole project. It is not a company. They do not, and again, there are some specific exceptions to this, SBIR is being one of the prime examples, but generally, they're not looking to fund a company, neither an American company, nor an English company, nor a Belgian company, nor a French company. They're looking to fund a promising project. So I hope that answers that question. Let me see here. Is it possible to apply for multiple funds at the same time? And I'm assuming you mean for the same project. And the answer, I'll start off by saying no. Well, no, actually, yes. Sorry about that. A tricky answer. The answer is yes. You can definitely apply, even for the exact same project, to multiple institutions. That being said, you cannot collect on the same project from more than one. You can do that to maximize your chances of being awarded. Another interesting point worth addressing here, something that we try to do as many times as we can, for example, if you have a drug delivery system, you could use that to target different types of cancer and submit that to different specific indications and specific mechanisms, and use it in a different way. And that would not be the same project, even though you would be advancing basically your delivery system with those funds in both cases. So it's kind of a game that you need to know how to play. And once you do, it is technically possible to receive funding from more than one source, but you need to know how to go about doing that. Again, I hope that answers the question. Yes, they're asking a few questions here about, I've seen it 2 or 3 times now, so I'm going to state, yes, absolutely, you will be receiving both a link to the recording of this webinar on YouTube and the slide deck. I'll be sending it out to you, so yes, absolutely, you'll be receiving all of that. And I see a few people here have asked also about our cost structure. I don't want to go into too many details because it's not really the point here, but basically we work on a success-oriented model. We receive a 6% success fee on any awards awarded. And to cover our overhead, we receive a retainer that is depends really on the size of the company and the scope of the R&D activities. So, for example, it could be starting at $4,000 a month for a small biotech company, a medium-sized biotech, and obviously working for J&J or Pfizer, $4,000 a month would not cover those activities. So it depends, basically. I think we're running out of time, but I'm going to look for another question to answer here. Well, there are some very specific questions here that I'd rather answer in person over email. It's not really much for everybody else to benefit from them. And yes, so we're kind of running out of time. I guess I'll just end it here. So I'd like to thank you very much for attending, and hope to see you next week in our next webinar. And thank you again.